Are you confused by the many different output options in Logic Pro? Mono versus stereo versus mono to stereo versus dual mono versus multi-output. What? If you've been using Logic Pro for a while, you'll probably notice that there's loads of different output options available to you when you choose an instrument or an audio track, or an effect. Let me show you. You have mono, you have stereo, you have dual mono, you have mono to stereo, and you have multi-output. So what's the difference? Let's start with mono and stereo. Mono means there's one channel of audio. The same one channel is feeding both speakers. Stereo, there are two channels of audio, a left channel and a right channel. The left speaker gets its own channel and the right speaker gets its own channel. What this allows for is variations across the soundstage. Let me show you. Notice how the stereo organ sounds a lot wider than the mono organ. It also sounds louder, and that's because it is. There are two channels here of the same thing, and when you have two channels, it gets louder. Okay, so that's mono and stereo, but what about dual mono? Isn't that just stereo? No, it's not. Dual mono allows you to process the two signals that make up a stereo signal independently. For instance, I have this stereo file here. I can now EQ the right channel independently from the left channel, and vice versa, so I have much more control. If I was to apply a stereo plugin here, it would apply these EQ changes to both channels evenly. Cool, makes sense. Let's move on to mono to stereo. So if you have a mono source, either software instrument or audio, and you go to add an effect, sometimes you will see mono to stereo as the output, this little arrow thing. What this does is convert your mono sound source into a stereo track so that it can take a stereo effect. So now your track can have some variation between the left and the right channels. Let's take a look. So I have my mono sound source as before, my organ. Now I'm going to add a Space Designer reverb plugin to it, and I'm going to choose mono to stereo. You'll notice that my track changes from mono to stereo. And you can tell that by the width of the meter down here. It's double the size when it's stereo. And with audio, you can tell it by looking at this symbol here. One circle means mono, two circles means stereo. Okay, so now we have a stereo track rather than a mono track. And if you just listen to it as it is, take note, remember, we're now going to switch to a mono reverb. Can you hear the difference? Even with the reverb, the sound is less wide and not as loud as the stereo version. So it really does make a big difference whether you choose mono or stereo. For some applications, you might want it mono, you might want a tighter sound, but sometimes you might want a wider sound and then you might choose to go for stereo. Are you still with me and not totally confused? Excellent. The last option we're going to look at is the multi-output. You'll sometimes come across this on certain software instruments. What this allows you to do is have more than the two outputs you have with a stereo output. So with the drum kit designer, for example, it allows you to have a channel for each individual drum, almost, which mimics what it's like to have a microphone on each individual drum of a drum kit, if you were recording a real drum kit. So let's have a butcher's. So first create a new software instrument, choose a multi-output instrument, choose multi-output, then we go to the mixer. Keep hitting the plus button until you get to aux. Then once you've got to aux, press the minus button to get rid of that. We don't need that. If I now play the drum kit, you'll see that I have 5 stereo outputs for that one drum kit. So I can treat the overheads differently to the kick, to the snare, to the toms, to the hi-hats stroke percussion. Very cool. So you have a lot more control and a lot more options if you are trying to mix a programmed kit. It also works for the studio horns and the studio springs, and it will subdivide the sections, the orchestral sections, into each of the instrument families. Pretty cool, huh? And it just came to me, there's one other type, which is the 5.1 output, and that is whenever you want to do anything that's surround sound. There's not too many of these in Logic Pro. You'll see it if you choose a software instrument such as Sculpture or some of the other synthesizers or samplers. You'll get this surround panner come up, and then you can route it to any of the 5.1 speakers in a surround system, if you have one. There you have it. You should now know all the different output options that are available to you in Logic Pro. And hopefully you know now when to use them. And if you like this video, then the tube thinks you'll like this one as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on another video. Take care.